Amber, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm so happy we could do this through all the technical difficulties and rescheduling that we both have gone through. I'm so happy that we finally got here. So,
Yes, yes. It was meant to happen in this moment, right? And I'm just super honored to have connected with you. I don't know how. I think the algorithm brought you to me on Instagram. And as soon as I saw a little bit of your story, I was like, oh, I got to get her on the show. But let's start off with an intro for people who are meeting you for the first time. Let them know who you are and what you do.
absolutely. So, my name is Amber Summerz. I am an advocate. I am a podcast host of Summer's Truths. I am a master certified life coach, and my main focus is domestic violence, sexual assault, and child abuse. So, through my story, I've taken that to help empower individuals who have gone through similar situations, as well as people who may be currently going through those situations now.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what really attracted me to you because we do share similar stories in regards to being survivors of abuse and trauma. And your story is a very unique one that I have not had on the podcast. So I'm very honored for you to come on and talk about it. But before we get to everything that you've gone through recently, I would love for you to talk about what the dynamic was like for you growing up as a kid. Because a lot of the things that we go through back then, it really shapes us into the people that we become as adults, and especially when we become parents ourselves. So, in as much detail as you're comfortable with talking about, what did it look like for you growing up?
So, growing up was, I would say, very difficult. We had a life where the outsiders who were looking in would see it as, oh, they have everything. They have nice cars, they have nice clothes, they have it all. But on the inside of the house, there was lots of abuse, there was lots of domestic violence. The first time I remember being abused, I was so little. I mean, honestly, I can't think back to the age, but I kind of have an idea just because I knew where it happened in the house we were living in. And I think maybe I was 4. And I just remember me jumping off of a bed and my dad not approving of the behavior. And to him, it was like, no, you're an animal. You can't act like that. And he took me to his bedroom, locked the door. I just remember hiding myself under this 4-legged wooden chair. And that's how small I was. I was able to fit underneath it. And I remember belt lashes just coming from each side. And to me, it felt like an eternity. And it just kept going on and on and on. As a child, you don't know how long things are happening. But for me, that was the first instance of trauma. When that happened, it was like, okay, maybe that won't happen again. Maybe I'm not allowed to jump off the bed. And I think that was the door to the abuse. After that, it was like every week. Then it was maybe once a month. Then it was like every day, depending on how often my dad was home. For the majority of my life, even into my teens, the abuse to me got worse. It went from I'm beating you with a belt to I'm tying you to a pole inside the house with actual handcuffs and I'm whipping you with the whip that he made himself. My dad went as far as pulling me out of regular school and homeschooling me during my 6th grade school year. And during that time, I think that was the roughest time of my life where I struggled a lot with, I think I'm going to kill myself. I don't want to do this anymore because I was a prisoner for an entire year. There was locks on all of the doors. The only way out was with a master key that my dad held himself. There were cameras in every inch of the house. So it wasn't like I could go somewhere and like not be seen, trying to do typical children stuff. But yeah, that was the childhood. It was very much so abusive. I put myself in a lot of situations to save my siblings from beatings because I loved them. But it definitely was a traumatic experience. And I don't think that anybody really just moves on from those things. We learn to deal with them and we just learn to be better individuals in our adult life and as parents.
Right. I'm curious to know, dealing with that as a kid, growing up in a home with such an abusive man in your life, did that paint a picture for the relationships that you got into as you got older, maybe in teenage or early adulthood? Did you see similarities in relationships, or was it like the complete opposite of what you were used to growing up?
It's crazy because this is a topic that I talk about so much. And as much as we have been through trauma, we tell ourselves, even as a child, I'm never going to be with someone like that. I'm never going to do that. And I think because I lacked the ability to see what a true, genuine, loving family and relationship was like. I didn't know what to look for. So in my teens, for me, it was like, I want a boyfriend. I want to feel loved. I want someone to look at me and make me feel good. And I think at 15 was the first time that I came to the realization that not everyone's going to give it to you the way that you want, because I got involved with an older guy and he ended up raping me. My first instance of a sexual altercation, it was rape. After that happened, it was like, okay, I don't need a boyfriend. I went through the stages of trying to heal in private because I told no one at all. It was like a secret to myself. And then I met my ex, and I met him when I was 16, and he charmed me. He just did everything that a young girl wants. He tells me I'm beautiful. He brings me to the football games. I'm like on his arm. How we look great together. It was a thing. But I didn't realize at such a young age that he was abusing me domestically, but slowly. It was, you can't go here. You can't wear that. You can't talk to them. I don't like that friend. It was lots of control. And I didn't understand it because I was used to it. So for me, I just normalized it. I was like, whatever, this is what it is. Until I got pregnant with my son. And when I was pregnant with him and I broke the news, physical. It turned from verbal to physical. He took my head, banged it into the car window. And I think at that moment, that's when I really said, I do not want this. I'd rather be alone. I hopped on an airplane, girl, from Arizona to Virginia, and I never looked back. Haven't seen him. We don't speak. He wants no relationship with his child, which I'm not upset about. But yeah, it's like we don't realize that a lot of what we go through as children molds the relationships we have in the future, good, bad, and ugly.
Yeah, absolutely. I commend you so much, first and foremost, for sharing that. It's not easy to talk about, it's not easy to listen to, but I think in hearing people's stories, we can see similarities in our own, and it allows us to feel less alone in our situation. So thank you so much for sharing as much as you did, because you didn't have to, but I appreciate you. So now I want to get to the incident that happened in 2020 with your mom. I know this is a very sensitive subject, trigger warning for anyone who's listening or watching, but take my audience on a journey of what you experienced, this life altering shift that happened to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So to backtrack just a little bit, when I turned 18 and I left Arizona and I went to Virginia, I moved back with my parents, my abusers, right? Well, my abuser, my father. And it was a very hard decision for me because it was like, do I escape abuse and go back to abuse? But for me, it was like, you know what? I'm just going to go. I'm 18. You can't touch me. You can't do nothing. I was wrong. My father still continued to be abusive in ways. And then I noticed how he was treating my newborn baby. And at that point, it was a realization for me, I got to get out of here. I got out of that situation. And over the next couple of years, I did my very best to educate my mom on domestic violence because I started to say, I can't allow you to live like this forever. You've been with him for over 20 years. It's time for a change. And I don't know how much I advocated, but I did it a lot. In 2020, there was an incident with a lot happened actually. My brother ran away from home, drove all the way from Virginia down to Florida to live with me. I opened my doors to him, but I realized that I was taking on more that I could handle because he was a lot like my father. And it was triggering for me. So I was like, look, you can't stay here. You got to go back. I'm sorry. As much as I don't want you being abused, I cannot do this. I had to put myself first. He went back. Then 3 months later, my little sister, who was 15 at the time, tried to commit suicide. And when she did that, it was almost like my mom didn't know, or my mom either was like very naive and just in denial about it. So when I told my mom, hey, you're at the hospital because your daughter tried to overdose on pills, she was like, no, she didn't. She shares the news with my dad. Instead of my dad trying to be like, hey, don't do that. What does he do? If you ever try and do that again, I'm going to fucking kill you myself. When I heard that, I said, you know what? I'm done. I hopped on the next plane from Florida to Virginia and I took my sister away. And when I did it, my mom did not fight me. She wrote me a document that says I'm giving my daughter to her sister. She is her guardian. And we did this all under my father's nose while he was at work. So when he got home from work, obviously, it's like, how could you let her go there? It was just this whole thing. And I told my mom, I said, once we got back to Florida, I said, you're not getting her back until you leave him. Unfortunately, I had to give her an ultimatum because this is the youngest baby. She's harming herself because of the man that you're with, and you're allowing it. And I think when I did that, the reality set in for my mother, and she was like, oh shit, I'm not going to have my babies. All my kids are leaving me because of him. So she went through the process of filing for separation. She presented the documents to him. He was not happy with it. He burned them over a stove. She was able to get this on video. It's just a whole thing. And finally, he decided, I'm going to sign it. But before he took her to go get it notarized, he said, are you sure you want to do this? And she said, yes, I do. He said, all right, well, I told you that it was till death do us part, but I'm going to sign them. And when my mom told me that, it was like, whew, what do you mean? You're not safe. Get out of there. She's like, I can't leave. Like, you never really understand what someone's going through in that situation. So over the course of the 2 weeks during that separation period, I was in contact with her all day, every day. What's going on and what's happening? And I didn't see it coming the way that it happened. I felt like it was going to happen because I told her, I just feel like he's going to do something to you. He's losing everything. And she was just like, no, he would never hurt me. Fast forward to October 31st of 2020. I get a call at 9:30 at night from my brother. And he's like, Mom and Dad are gone. And a part of me was just like, what? What do you mean they're gone? And he's like, they're gone. They're dead. And I'm like, is this a joke? And he hung up on me. I'm so far away. I can't get in my car and just drive to the house and see what's going on. And it was very hard to speak to him because he witnessed it. He didn't witness the altercation, but he heard the gunshots. He walked in the room and he found them. So I'm in a panic. I don't know what to do. I called the closest person I knew out there to go to the house, and they confirmed, yeah, it has happened. And I think my whole world just crashed because not only did I lose my mom, I lost my dad. Now my brother's there going through this. I have to raise a 15-year-old. I'm not ready to raise a teenager. I'm still trying to heal my teenage self. So that day has definitely molded me, and I don't think I'll ever be the same. But it's a story that I take with me to share with other people who are in domestic violence, because it could be you, unfortunately.
Mm. I just want to pause and take a moment because that was a lot to take in. I got full body chills listening to your story, and I just commend you so much for being able to speak about it in such a way. It's only been not even 4 years since that happened, and just to see the woman that you are now, I'm just in awe of you, and I just have so much respect for you for what you're doing despite something that literally fucking broke you. Like losing your mom and your dad, even though you had a horrible relationship with him, but that's your blood, that's your DNA. And to not have that anymore, I couldn't even imagine what you experienced. So, what was it like for you? Like, how the fuck do you heal from something like that? What did that look like in the beginning?
Girl, I think for a really long time, I went into a very, very dark place. I mean, I was just kind of dragging my feet throughout my days. And a lot of the first year after I lost my mom, it was a blur. Even the first 2 weeks, like planning her service and going up there and speaking in front of all the people who came to honor her life, I barely remember that day. I just remember everyone saying, oh, you were so strong. You didn't cry. Like, I was so fucking numb that like I couldn't cry because I was crying for 12 hours straight at night and then waking up the next day and putting a smile on because I was around family and relatives and I gotta do all these things. But to this day, I mean, I still cry, like I'm holding back tears right now, but it's not something that you just heal from. You really just learn to deal with it. And it does get easier to deal with over time. But holidays, birthdays, those are the days that I feel like I grieve over and over again, like it just happened yesterday. So my healing is still going on. I will never be fully healed, but I know that I will be stronger because of what I've been through. And I know that I could go through anything and come out okay. But I'm never going to be okay, you know?
Absolutely. I don't think anyone who would ever experience such a profound loss like that would ever be like, no matter how much time has passed, like, okay, now I'm okay. You know what I mean? Like that's not something that it's like you said, it changed you completely. But the work that you're doing now is so commendable despite the pain that you're honestly living through every single day. I'm sure it's painful for you to talk about this, to relive this, but your story is so powerful and that it's going to help so many people, and to the point that y'all, she was featured in People magazine. Like the story was featured in People. So I would love for you to talk about how that happened and why did you feel it was okay, not that it was okay, but how did you find the strength within yourself to share so publicly on such a big platform like People magazine?
Yeah. Sorry.
No, no worries. And if you got to cry, girl, please let it out, okay?
Thank you.
Yes. You ain't got to be strong all the time, okay?
So, a couple days after what happened, there was a news story locally in Virginia that broke, and it talked about how there were 3 murder suicides in a matter of 3 days. And my parents was one of them. And all that they put in the story was murder suicide in Fredericksburg, Virginia, but there was no context to it. So people are looking at it and they're like, murder suicide? Why? What happened? So I took it upon myself to reach out to the news station that wrote the story. Because in my mind, we'd never told anyone about the child abuse that we went through. And my mom had never told anyone the abuse that she was going through. So a part of me was just like, you know what? This is time to break my silence. I can't just sit here and not say anything. So the news station got back in contact with me. They interviewed me in the car while I was driving from Florida to Virginia with the kids in the car with my husband. And as soon as I got in the house, like literally pulling my bags out of the car in Virginia, I was on the big screen in Virginia on the TV. And my mother-in-law was watching the story, and I'm just sitting there like, oh my God, I cannot believe this is happening right now. After that happened, the next news station reached out to me. They're like, we want to know what happened. Then the next thing I know, People magazine published the story. And I think at that point, I was like, holy shit, is this really that big of a deal? You know, like, doesn't this happen all the time? And for me, it was like, you know what? I need to do more. Like, I have to share this story on a higher scale because there are so many people out there who are going through this and they don't talk about it like we did. And I started getting responses. People were reaching out like, I'm in a domestic violence relationship. Your parents' story has empowered me. I think it's time that I leave. So since that's happened, girl, I have not stopped telling my story. I have not stopped writing. I have not stopped advocating. I just feel like there's so much more that I could be doing right now, but I'm taking my steps, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Round of applause, y'all. Round of applause for the amazing thing that you're doing. Like, it's just so commendable, honestly. And I'm just so inspired by you. And I know that you're a coach, and I would love to get some coaching for anyone who's listening who finds themselves in these types of situations. Now, we know the statistics when it comes to leaving an abusive relationship. That's the most dangerous time, right? Unfortunately, what happened to your mom when she finally decided to leave, that's when she lost her life. And that's something that happens so much in these relationships. And there is this fear for the victim who's dealing with the abuse that I'm terrified that if I do leave, something horrible is going to happen. So, what would you tell someone who is currently in an abusive situation and they're teeter tottering back and forth of like, I want to leave, but I'm scared. I don't know what to do. What is a piece of advice you would tell them?
So I say this, I think that when it comes to a domestic violence relationship and being afraid to leave, it's completely normal. But you really have to think about your safety plan. I know a lot of us just want to tell them, I'm leaving, I'm not doing this anymore. But ultimately, like, that is just not the best route when dealing with someone who is abusive. So craft a safety plan, talk to your closest friends and family, let them know, hey, I want to get out of this situation. I'm going to need somewhere to go. I may need some help, but leave first before you let them know you're leaving. And that is the biggest piece of advice that I could give you, because if you can get out before they know that you're out, your chances of survival are higher. Although there are instances where they stalk you, they will follow you. But having a safety plan and a place to go where they don't know where you are, your chances are so much higher getting out of that situation.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember when I left my last relationship that became abusive, I was very intentional with where I went because I knew that he didn't know where my best friend lived. So I knew, like, in that moment, even though the way that I left was not planned at all, it was very chaotic. It was a life or death situation for me, but I was definitely strategic in that way. It's like, I'm going to go somewhere that I know he cannot find me. And then that's when I spoke up and I started asking for help. That's the first time that I actually told someone what was going on. And that ultimately saved my life. So, yeah, ditto to everything you said. I think it's just so important to advocate for yourself and to let people know what's going on, even if it's just one person in your life. You don't need this whole tribe. Like, literally, it was just one person that I told, and that started trickling out to helping me heal my own trauma that I went through in that relationship. So I want to know, I know you mentioned a little bit earlier that your father was controlling and there were other signs of domestic violence in your parents' relationship. So for someone who is listening, they feel like they're in a toxic and abusive relationship, but they don't really know what are warning signs or red flags to look out for. What would you say are some that we should be aware of when we're in these types of situations?
So, with domestic violence relationships, they can either start off really strong or they can start off gradually slow. So, I think that for anyone, and I just did a podcast with the nonprofit I'm a part of, and we had this conversation, but honestly, anything that feels uncomfortable or that feels wrong to you is an indicator that this is not okay. Whether it's calling you out of your name, gaslighting you to make you feel like you're crazy for feeling these feelings, accusing you of things you didn't do, monitoring where you go, your time, who you talk to, what you wear. Anything to me that is a sign of them trying to control you is a route towards domestic violence. And the sooner you can get out in the beginning stages, the better chances you have, because the more you let it go on, the more they think they can get away with, and the longer they think they can keep you in this cage of not wanting to leave.
Absolutely. It makes me think of the relationship that I was in. There were warning signs that I saw and I chose to ignore. So I am going to take responsibility for that. I don't take responsibility for the abuse that he did to me, but I do take responsibility of what I chose to continue dealing with. And there was moments in the relationship where my body was physically telling me that something was off. Like, I'm telling you, Amber, there was one point in the relationship that I woke up physically fucking ill every day, anxious, nervous system is all over the place, like, just have this feeling. And this was even before it got physically abusive. This was before he ever put his hands on me or anything like that. But my body was telling me, like, sis, something is not right. And it took for me to unfortunately almost lose my life in order for me to finally leave. But I think it's so important for us women, especially because we do have this inner knowing, this intuition, this angel that's just hovering over us and telling us, like, if something is not right, please fucking listen to it, because ultimately it's there trying to protect you, you know?
Yes. And I think that also it's like we as women, I think our intuition is always going to be stronger than any other creature on this world,
Yes.
AKA men. We just know shit. And, you have to trust your gut. But I also feel like as women, we do ignore a lot of the red flags in relationships, even ones that are not domestic violence based, because this person that we're with is giving us so much here that we never got anywhere else, whether it's they love me better, they take care of me better, the sex is great, this, and that. But on the other hand, there's all these red flags that we're ignoring because of this. And sorry to break it to you, but there is someone out there who will offer you everything. But because we are so afraid of, I don't want to start over, I don't want to look, I don't want to have to date, we settle for less than what we deserve. And it's so common with us, even with men. I mean, you just want somebody to love you and you will settle for what is given.
Yep, absolutely. Settling for the bare minimum. That was the bare minimum was my middle fucking name in these relationships, right? And it took for me to go through these really shitty situations in order to finally stop the cycle and learn from it and change the narrative that now when I do decide to go back out there and date and find my forever partner, I know I'm not going to attract the old people that I used to because I'm not that same woman anymore, but it's taken a lot of healing to get to that point. So I want to know, being that you've experienced this yourself and you grew up in abuse, it's really hard to build yourself back up after leaving. So, speaking to someone who's listening, say they just left and they have no fucking clue what to do. They're lost, they're broken, they're confused. What would you say are some really important stepping stones in order to start building themselves back up after leaving these types of abusive situations?
So for everyone, it's going to look different. I think the first step is acknowledging what you've been through, accepting it. A lot of people have been through some crazy shit and they'll say, it didn't happen the way that people think. Girl, you need to sit down and talk to yourself about what you've been through first and listen. Like, listen to yourself. So accepting is the first step. I think that some people really need to consider therapy. I know for me, therapy is something I tried, but I found more peace and healing in writing and advocating and speaking and telling my story. So find a women's group, find people that you can talk to who can relate to you, because you will feel so much better. And lastly, put yourself first. Put yourself first with work, put yourself first with your friends. I think a lot of people who come out of domestic violence relationships, they tend to accept toxic behaviors outside of it in the workplace with the people they're friends with, because they feel like, well, it can't get any worse than that. No, accepting any type of toxicity in your life is a no-no. So really starting to put yourself first, I think, is super important.
Yeah, absolutely. I say it all the time that the relationship that you have with yourself, it really sets the tone for every other relationship that comes into your life, not just the romantic ones. So really getting back to self, really sitting in your shit, doing the work and feeling the feelings, all of that is so important in order for you to really start to heal from it. And know that this is not an overnight success. There's going to be so many moments where you want to give up. There's going to be so many moments where you feel like this shit is too fucking much to handle. But being really intentional about it and getting around other people who have similar experiences and stories and taking in content like this, having these types of conversations, it truly can absolutely change your life. And that's really why I started my podcast after doing my healing, going to therapy, journaling, doing all those things. I was like, I have something here and I know I can help other people with my story. And now look, we're in season 3 having beautiful conversations featuring beautiful women like yourself who are doing this advocacy work that really we need more of this in this space specifically, because domestic violence and trauma and abuse, it's so hush hush, especially in our communities, communities of color. We need to normalize that this shit is not normal. And how do we do that? By fucking talking about it and speaking up and advocating for not just ourselves, but for other people as well. So I'd love for you to talk about the nonprofit. She's a board of directors, y'all. It's called Ignite Her Inc. And I would love for you to talk about how you got started with that. What do you guys do? And how can people support and help you in that group?
Absolutely. So I got connected with Ignite Her in December of last year through a mutual connection. So it started out with just me sending an Instagram message like I did to you, like, hey, I heard your story, want to connect, want to talk. And I spoke with Tiffany Newton. She is the founder of Ignite Her. We just started talking about our stories, and there were so many similarities and like even dates. It was like she left her domestic abuser on October 31st of 2018, and my mom
Wow.
was killed on October 31st of 2020. So like we were just relating on so much. And
That's called alignment, okay?
girl, thank you. And what's funny is her name is Tiffany, and my born first name is Tiffany.
Wow.
So I was like, okay, the universe is aligned. I'm meant to be here. And then from there, I got to meet the other board members, and it was just like, we just clicked so well. We did our first event back in January. It was a self-defense event. So we had about 30 women there. We basically showed them the skills that they need to get out of a situation where the abuser is trying to empower themselves onto them, whether it's choking, holding them down, hitting them. We just did our first fireside chat. So ultimately, we are here to put together workshops to give women skills that they need to not only defend themselves, but to have the courage to leave a domestic violence situation. So anyone who is in a situation like that, go to igniteher.org. We have resources. We have upcoming workshops if you're in Florida. If you're someone who's in a DV relationship and you just need someone to talk to, reach out. Like, we may not be experts, but we definitely can provide you the guidance and the resources that you need to get out of that type of situation.
I want to say something. You guys are absolutely experts in your experience, okay? So don't diminish that. Give yourself your flowers just because, you don't have a fancy title or anything. No, you have lived experience. This is your lived truth, and you're able to help people with what it is that you've gone through. So we're definitely going to link all the information in the show notes. What part of Florida are they based in?
So we're based in Tampa, but if you're anywhere in Florida and you want to connect, please talk to me. Like, I am here. We are flexible. We will make sure that you have what you need.
Yes, absolutely. There is help out there, y'all. So please advocate for yourself, use your voice, and find your people, because I promise you, the internet, while it can be a very ugly and dangerous place, there's also such a beautiful side to it too. And that's how me and Amber were able to connect, because of us speaking our truth and sharing our stories. And look at us now. We're having a beautiful conversation. So I do want to ask about forgiveness in regards to your father. And this could be heavy. If this is too much for you, let me know. But have you been able to forgive him? And if you had the opportunity to say something to him, being the woman that you are now, what would you say?
So forgiveness for me is something that I'm human. I struggle with. I still struggle with forgiving some people that owe me money from 10 years ago.
Facts. Facts. Run me my coins, damn it.
I don't care if it was $20. So I do struggle with forgiveness, especially with my father. There are certain periods of the year when I'm in certain phases of my healing where I'm like, you know what? I think I've forgiven him. I think I am good. And then there are other phases where I'm like, fuck him. How dare you? This is not cool. So I don't think that I have completely forgiven him. And I think it's because I'm still healing. And even being healed, like, how can you forgive someone completely for doing such a horrible thing? Not like I'm just forgiving him for killing my mom. I have to also forgive you for everything you put me through growing up. Like, you stripped me of so much. You violated me so much. That's a topic we didn't even get into talking about. But I think for me, I've just kind of learned I have conversations about him with my son, because at the end of the day, like, that is your grandfather, but he is very much aware of the type of person that he is. I can't sit here and say, like, I don't love my father and I never loved him, because at the end of the day, like, he gave me life. And despite the abuse, there were good moments. He may have been an evil person, but there were times where I do feel like he did the things a real father should do. But there was also the illness in him that took over and caused him to be a not so great person. So forgiveness for me is really just, you've forgiven someone when you can think about them and you're no longer like, ugh, I hate
And you
them.
feel nothing. Yep.
Exactly.
Yep.
I still feel something every now and again. Tomorrow I may forgive you, the next day I may not. It's just, I don't know how I'm going to get there. I guess it's a part of my healing, but maybe 20 years from now, I'll really be able to be like, yeah, it's good. But right now, I'm still not there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're human at the end of the day, and you have real life emotions that we all experience. So thank you so much for sharing that. Do you have any feelings of regret or anything like that when it comes to your mom? And if you do, how do you handle any of those negative emotions that may come up?
I think a lot of the times, especially when I am in that season of depression, because we all go through different seasons in life. And I think my biggest regret is when I went to get my sister. And it's some people will think about it and be like, oh, that's so small. But I was so angry with her because she allowed what happened to happen to my sister. And when I went to get my sister, I felt like my mom wanted to embrace me more than I allowed. And, I gave her that hug that you give someone, like a real quick one, and to leave.
Yeah.
And I regret it so much to this day because it was the last hug. Sorry.
No. Don't apologize.
That was the last hug that I gave her. And I feel like she just wanted to be embraced. She just wanted me to know that she loved me and she was sorry. And I know over the course of the 2 weeks, she did that. She let me know how much she was sorry. But that's my biggest regret, like not showing her the love that she needed during that time. But also, like, I wish I could have just picked her up and freaking put her in my trunk of the car when I was leaving. But she was just so adamant about staying. And I felt like maybe I could have fought a little harder. But a part of me was just like, she's a grown woman. I'm going to have to let her figure part of this out on her own.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that now you've gained a forever guardian angel that is with you every moment of your life. And I know she's so proud of you, of who you've become. So I commend you so much for what you're doing now, and just know that she's with you for the rest of your life, and she's so fucking proud of you. And I'm proud of you, and everyone who's listening is proud of you too. So I want to know, what would you say is the biggest lesson you've learned about yourself with everything that you've gone through in your life, good, bad, and ugly? What are you most proud of about yourself?
I'm a bad bitch.
Yes. Yes, you are.
No, but seriously, like, I think that it took for me to go through so much to really realize, like, I hold a lot of power. And I think a lot of us downplay our positions in this world, not realizing that, like, we are capable of so much if we really just put our foot down and ground and walk through this life and this path the way that we're supposed to be. I have found that I have so much strength, courage, confidence that maybe I didn't have growing up, that now in my adult life, someone could tell me something about myself. I don't give a fuck what you think. This is me. If you don't like it, it is what it is. Like, I feel like I am just happy with who I am now, where 10 years ago, I probably was thinking about a million things that I could do to myself to change who I am, to make people like me more. Like, at this point, it is what it is. I don't care, and I'm happy with that.
Yes, I love that. And that goes to the next question that I want to ask you. So, since you are on the Watch Us Thrive podcast, tell me, what does thriving mean to you?
Thriving means living living in your truth, girl. Like, you're not just like doing good. You're living in the things that you've been through, and you're allowing it to push you forward, make you successful. Like, every single day I say this, I've thrived. Today, I've thrived. I've accomplished everything that I said I was going to, and no one can take that from me.
Yes, period. Period. I'm here for it. Yes, queen. You see, despite the shit that Amber has gone through, look at her now. And that can be you too. And that's why I love sharing stories like yours, that although they come from a very painful and dark place, you do have the power and the ability within you to turn it around and to really make something from nothing. You know what I mean? So shout out to you. I want to know, what's next for Amber. What do you have going on? How can people follow you and support you? And share any last words of anyone listening of what you want them to take away from this conversation.
Yeah. So, as for me and things that I'm working on, I think that this year is really the year where I don't want to say rebranding myself, but I'm just changing the way that the outside world sees things. I want to add a different approach with my podcast, like similar to what you're doing. I've always been so, I need a schedule. I need this, I need that way. I just want to come in here one day and just turn on the camera and the mic and just go with it. Like, whatever comes to mind, comes to mind. So I'm really going to put more thought into my podcast because I've slacked, but that's also because I have been in my healing stage for the past almost 4 years.
And wait, you just had a baby. So like that too. Congratulations. I wanted to say like you're a mom of 2 now. So like girl, you got a lot on your plate.
Yes, 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 absolutely. She will be 1 next month, so
Yes.
I can't believe that.
Congratulations.
Thank you. But yeah, another thing I'm wanting to work on more this year is writing my book. I have been writing this book since I was a teenager. You know, it started out as just a very innocent diary that has turned into a book of emotions, feelings, stories. So I really want to focus on putting the energy into that. I'm 28 right now, but my goal for myself is by the time I'm 30, so 2 years, I want to have that book out. I want to have it released. I want people to really know what I've been through. Yeah. And if you want to find me, Amber Summerz on Instagram. My last name is Summerz with a Z, not an S. AmberSummerz.com, Summerz Truth Podcast on all platforms. Yeah, connect with me, talk to me. I am all about nurturing relationships. I have found that I've made some of my best friends on Instagram, girl.
Yes.
Sliding in
Yes.
DMs. So
Yes.
please reach out to me.
Absolutely. I just want to say thank you again so much for coming on and sharing just a little bit of your story. This is just like the tip of the iceberg of Amber Summerz, but I'm just so proud of you and I just cannot wait to see what comes next. I cannot wait for that book. When it comes out, I need you back on the show so we can promote it and talk about it. You put it out there, it's gonna fucking happen, okay? Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Thank you.